Coming up today, we'll take you to the Walk for Yes that happened in Newcastle over the weekend.
I'm going to tell you why I'm voting yes.
We'll tell you about Adamstown Bowling Club's live music memberships, and Dan will tell you about the new single from Wayward Kings. Produced on Awabakal and Warramai Land, this is The Good Stuff, powered by BYD on Newcastle Live.
This is
Good. Good
stuff.
The good stuff. Adamstown Bowling Club has just launched their live music memberships following their renewed focus on the city's live music. The membership offers live music lovers an array of perks, including drink deals, exclusive invitations to select side shows, and other member-only offers. It only costs $6 to get a live music membership, which will last till December 2024. To find out more, head on over to newcastlelive.com.au. The good stuff. Over the weekend, thousands of campaigners took to the streets across Australia to take part in the Walk for Yes. We're going to share the speech that Auntie Tracy Hanshaw gave to those that attended the rally in Newcastle. Tracy is an Awabakal Aboriginal elder, mum to two and grandmother of two, studying 2 degrees, a Bachelor of Global Indigenous Studies and a Bachelor of LLB Laws in Honours. Tracy is also the founder and managing director of Justice Aunties Inc. Let's get into it.
Does anyone know how big the Constitution actually is? Have you ever seen it? Oh, cool, because here it is. That's the Constitution of Australia, everybody. This tiny, tiny little book. Okay? All right, just so that we all know what we're talking about here. That's brilliant. So I'm going to tell you why I'm voting yes. So the referendum is going to be held on October 14th. Not to change the Constitution, but to add a new section to it. To the end of it, Section 129. The Constitution is not changing, it's getting an extra section. The First Nations Peoples section, Section 129. This will be the first time ever in this country's colonised 235-year history and the Constitution's history since it came into effect 122 years ago that First Nations people will ever have been considered to be recognised. Australia is the only country in the world that does not currently recognise its First Nations peoples in its government document. Who has never made treaties with their First Nations peoples? People that have never ceded their sovereignty over this land. The effects of colonisation and colonialism on First Nations peoples are well documented. For their health, their life expectancy, deaths in custody, poverty, systemic racism, violence, the destruction of culture and heritage sites, education and employment. I also know what created and caused these lasting effects. I remember in the 1960s and the 70s, let me just, this country where any person that was not white was hated. I remember being called a little black gin in those days. Oh, I forgot I wrote this. I remember burning my bra on the clothesline in the 70s for women's liberty and getting flogged from my mother for burning my own bra. I remember the violence perpetrated against me in the 70s and the 80s by the general population, the education department, police, the government, and temporary white stepfathers. I remember living in the inner city, western suburbs of Sydney, and random people walking past me saying, "Look at that dirty little gin. Oh, look, clean." I lived the ongoing transgenerational trauma of my upbringing by a 1940s Aboriginal stolen generation mother who is still alive to this very day. I remember being 15 in 1981 and Mum pulling me out of school to get a job so that we could pay the rent and buy food. I remember my 16th birthday crying and singing at the top of my voice the latest Moving Pictures new song, What About Me? It isn't fair, and I've had enough, and I want my share. I remember when my two kids were born, one in 1988 and the second one in 2002. And the midwife holding them up saying, these are Aboriginal babies. And the fear I had as a single mum, leaving the hospital before I was well enough out of fear that they were going to take my kids for no other reason than them being Aboriginal. I remember the shit show during the 1990s over Mabo, and all the white fellas believing their land was going to be taken from them. Land that was stolen to begin with, and the seller had no right to sell to them. I remember all these times over the last 30 years I've attended protest marches for Aboriginal rights, begging to be treated equally, not to be removed, domestic violence, another death in custody, another useless inquest, forced closures of remote Aboriginal communities, and the Northern Territory intervention, and the list goes on. All of these ongoing breaches of human rights. I remember decade after decade, more than half a century, hoping that things would change, having hope that one day I would be safe in my own country, hoping that all the efforts by all of us protesting over all of these years would bring about change. For me, this is a human rights issue. These are breaches of the United Nations Declarations on the Rights of Indigenous People. Dr. Chelsea Watego said it best last year. She said, fuck hope. It's just another day in the colony. Well, you know what? She's right. Ain't gonna get no shit, no time soon. What will bring about change and improvement is this referendum. The fact that the people of this country are voting, finally, after 122 years, to pay respects to First Nations peoples by recognising them in the Constitution is a huge monumental step forward. It's an acknowledgement and debunking once and for all of the terra nullius theory, rectifying the wrong done by the colonisers. The 1967 referendum was supposed to make us equal. It was supposed to assimilate Aboriginal people to be considered the same as white people. The most successful referendum ever, it is called. Well, I call bullshit. It didn't do any of that. We are not considered citizens in our own country. We are not welcome in our own country, and we are still treated by governments and the people of this country as outcasts and the dregs of society. The Aboriginal problem. Aunt Rosalie Monk said it best, I am not the problem. The problem has always been in this country the lack of respect for its First Nations peoples. The legacy of over 65,000 plus years of this country's history, disrespected, treated poorly, deprived and not appreciated for its legacy. The acknowledgement that this country is not 235 years old, it's over 65,000 years old. The longest continual living culture in the world, something to behold, treasure, appreciate and respect. That's what this referendum will fix. Whilst I am not a fan of the Uluru Statement of the Heart and how it came about, the fact it does not represent all First Nations perspectives, a voice to Parliament for First Nations people's representation, enshrined in the Constitution so that it can never be torn down by future governments, will help our people for all the reasons previously mentioned. It will be a group of 25 people to speak on behalf of what affects our mob's best practice from our perspectives on how to address them. It will be up to our mobs to ensure the right people are on that voice to Parliament and get a seat at that table. If there is ever going to be change in the plight of Aboriginal people in this country, it needs to be now. It's been too long, and no one should wait any longer. 235 years our mobs have waited. It's time to look to the future and ensure our future is better than our past. Ensure my grannies never have to suffer or endure what my mother and I endured. I love my mobs, all of my mobs. White fellas need to be listening now and not speaking. The antagonistic racism coming from the white no campaigners is unhinged and has to stop. So call it out. If you don't know, then find out. There is no excuse. And finally, all you are being asked to do is write yes. A new section 129 added on to the end of this book. It's that simple. The time is now. It's time to vote. I'm done. I'm tired. After 6 decades of waiting and hoping for change, it's time to respect this nation's history and its people. And that's why this little black gin is voting yes.
This is where it sounds good.
Good stuff.
Newcastle heavyweights Wayward Kings dropped their new single over the weekend. The song's called ALAT, and it's the first taste we're getting from the band's forthcoming EP. The song features an absolutely blistering drum take from Nick Bucey, and is sure to be a highlight of the band's set when they take to the stage at the Stag in October. Tickets for the show in October are available now. Head over to newcastlelive.com.au to grab them.
Good. Stuff.
That's it for the good stuff today. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you tomorrow from 4 p.m.